Life is kind of tricky in that no matter how good you are or think you are, no matter how much you follow the seemingly right rules, no matter how much you walk on the seemingly correct path, no matter how hard you've worked, there comes this strange period where everything suddenly becomes a mess. You are sad, you are uninspired, you are confused, you are being rejected by life, it seems. Everything is suddenly a struggle. Now, there's many reasons why this may happen. And one of these reasons is that it may be time for you to remember home. Welcome to episode 4 of the Beautiful Mess podcast. Igama lami ubusisiwe Dlamini. Lend me your ear, lend me your open heart, and let's talk about the journey back home. What does this mean? Why is it necessary? Why does it play out the way that it does? Why do our guides do this to us? I bring this to you with love, and I hope that it can shift whatever needs to be shifted inside of you. Home. It is the place from where your understanding of life unfolds. It is where you are orientated into a culture and on who you are. It is where you are first nurtured and guided. It is home that gave you your first drink and your first thing to eat. It is where you are first wrapped in clothes. Most of what one uses to survive day-to-day life today was received and learned at home first. You saw it at home. You lived it at home. At some point, you go out into the world on your own and make sense of life using the insight you received at home. You pick up on other things, and eventually you are negotiating between what you received at home and what you discover on your own, outside of home. This gives rise to other versions of you, for better or for worse. But no matter what you choose to erase, alter, or keep from home in your ongoing negotiations of self, home remains the base of that ongoing negotiation. Home remains the integral part of your life story. Home will always be a part of the story of how you came to be who you are today. On a spiritual level, our ancestors are home too. Just like our homes on earth, it is the principles that exist in our ancestral homes that influence what we are to become and do in this life. Unlike the physical home, however, this home that is far beyond earth is one that we are not explicitly aware of initially. Our transition into this physical world somewhat silences our awareness of the ancestral home when we settle on earth. Despite this, what we receive from the physical home is indeed powered by the ancestral home. There comes a point for most of us where the ancestral home calls for our awareness so that we can be set on the path that aligns with who we are in totality. This call lives inside of us, and at some point its volume is raised so that we can hear the ancestral home once again. This is the calling that lives inside all of us. Now, the calling is often attributed to those who are expected to become traditional healers. Izangoma, inyanga, healers, all kinds of healers, spiritual workers, divine workers, whatever you would call them, whatever you would group them as. The calling is often attributed to those people. However, since we all come from an ancestral home, we all get the call eventually. So in this context, I want you to switch your mind to look at it more broadly. When your ancestors or guides ask of something, or when you do something in memory of them, or when you do something in honor of them, there is a call that you are responding to, whether you are a divine worker or not. The call raises its volume in your world, and you respond with whatever action is required. Even a simple thanksgiving for your ancestors is a response to the call that you felt inside of you. Something in you is moved into celebrating with them in that way. Something in you is moved into acknowledging them in that way. Something in you knows that you are carried by this unseen force, this unseen family. So again, I say, we all have the call embedded in us because we all come from the ancestral. We go back to our physical homes to collect ourselves, usually, to check up on the family, to fulfill certain responsibilities that we have as the children of that home. Sometimes we literally just go back to feel that love, to get that air that we are familiar with from home. All of that grounds us, it balances us, it renews us, it refreshes us, in most cases, for most of us. The ancestral home calls you for those similar reasons too. You are called back to attain stability, to receive and give love and nourishment, to be cleansed, to fulfill certain roles as a child of that tribe. It nourishes your spirit and equips you with the things that maintain you and the ancestral homestead that you come from. If you are off track, for whatever the reason, the homestead as a whole will not be content by virtue of your being its child, by virtue of its bond to you and your bond to it. If your ancestral home is not okay for whatever the reason, your own life will be unstable by virtue of your being a child of that homestead, by virtue of your bond to it. Now, this is not only about culture. It is not only about our relationship with abogogo nabomkhulu. It is actually a manifestation of the interconnectedness of creation as a whole. Our cultures and our relationships with our ancestors is a subcategory of that interconnectedness of creation. This is how God, the source, is still very much part of the picture. God is the creator, God is creation. It is by God's design that we hold space for each other as beings. This is part of divinity's function. This is part of the universe's function as a whole. And what we do with our ancestors, what we are expected to do with our ancestors, is a subcategory of this bigger purpose of the universe, of this bigger purpose that God created. Now, the call of the ancestors, it can feel unfamiliar at times, especially in the beginning. It can be disruptive, and it makes the call seem like somewhat of an inconvenience. It makes the call seem annoying. It makes the call traumatizing, because it does interrupt the life that we have come to know. But the thing is, your physical existence, the parts of you that can physically be seen and accessed, that is not you in your totality. It is important for you to awaken who you are in the ancestral home, so that you can know who you are in totality, so that you can begin to live holistically. When you don't know who you are in the ancestral home, you are basically walking around your life and going through your life with one arm missing, so to speak. And there's only so much you can carry safely when one of your arms is missing, or when you only have one leg to stand on. Your ancestors are the other part of your life's body. The call aligns you to what was agreed upon in your own life contract. This is also how you remain protected in this world that is filled with many hazards and distractions and many parts. It is not only about making your ancestors happy, appeasing abogogo nabomkhulu. It is very much about your own well-being. The call is largely centered around your own well-being. If you are well kept and living your life accordingly and living holistically, the homestead will be content. Because the homestead, the ancestral homestead, is actually responsible and accountable for your well-being. The things that our ancestors call us to do are things that will actually benefit us as individuals as well. But they need your help so that they have the power to help you and the rest of the living family that is connected to you. And that is why you have these responsibilities towards them. These responsibilities power what they do to take care of us, to make sure that we are walking on the right path. We give them that energy through fulfilling these responsibilities so that they can give us their energy in guarding and guiding us. As much as they are your body, you are their body too. And you have to be in sync with them. And they have to be in sync with you to maintain life on earth, to maintain your life on earth, to maintain your legacy on earth, the family's legacy on earth, and to maintain life in the ancestral home. So let's take it back to the basics of basics. Think about a child who is called back into the house before it gets dark, or a child who is stopped from wandering off too far. We are all that child in the ancestral home, no matter how old we are, as grown as we may be. We are all that child to that ancestral home. We all need to be told of our parameters so that we remain on the path that will take us to the right place. Now that child who has a curfew, that child who is told not to go there, not to do this, to come back home at this time, that child, that young child, may not understand why their parent won't let them wander off in the other direction that was spotted by their curiosity. Nor will they understand why they have to be home by a certain time. To the child, these are just rules and annoying limitations. And that's often how some people interpret or receive their call from the ancestral home. Ish, amadlozi. They live their lives. Bafunan, hey, amadlozi ayadina. Hey, amadlozi. Why? Like, just why won't they leave me alone? Like, what do they want? Like, why do I have to do this? Those are often the things that some people feel about the things that their ancestors want of them, or that their ancestors instruct them to do. But the parents of that young child, let's go back to that young child, the parents of that young child who was told not to do certain things and to do certain things, they were actually serving their child that guardianship. There was a loving purpose to it. There was a protective purpose to it. And that child goes on to grow without ever truly realizing that part of what led to their survival, part of what led to them reaching that age in their life as they become adults, was those calls from their parents. The constant delivery from their parents, the constant guidance from their parents setting parameters for them. We are all that child, and our ancestors are those parents, constantly saving us without us being aware. That's always been their role, that's always been their responsibility. But at some point, they need to loudly call us so that we can be aware of their presence and their existence, and go on to make even more space for their guidance that will help us move through life accordingly. Because life gets harder and trickier as we grow up. Life gets harder and trickier as we grow up. We are introduced to new things. We experience things by virtue of the free will that is granted to us. So at some point, they must loudly call us back. Because we can't walk on just any path that the world offers. We are given opportunities to explore them by virtue of free will, but it is important to know which paths are truly carved for us so that we can live constructive lives that benefit us as individuals and our ancestral homestead. Everybody has a role to play in the maintenance of the village. Everyone has a role to play in the maintenance of their respective homestead. Your life is an extension of Umsamo Wagini, your ancestral homestead. And so whatever you do with your life affects your entire tribe, both the living and the non-living. And you'll always be expected to do what will benefit the larger group as well. To allow Wanda, Gini, to allow the necessary growth, to allow the necessary development, to allow the maintenance of the legacy. And again, this is not limited to culture. It is a general way of being. We are all connected through the Creator. We all have roles to play in the story of creation, the ongoing story of creation. Our actions, no matter how small, affect the greater collective. Nobody is an island, and nobody's spirit is an orphan. That's not how life in itself plays out. What we do in our cultures is just a subcategory of our roles in creation as a whole. And to ensure that you play your part in the most favorable way, both for the community, both for the collective and yourself, you must be called to remember and realize and learn some things. Otherwise, you just become a liability and a hazard, and you become lost to Umsamo Agini. You must be called home to be who you are meant to be. And you will be called home for the preservation, nourishment, and equipment, and tools, and lessons that you require and is required of you each and every single time. Now, some of the reasons for your being called will not be nice. Yes, they will not be nice. But the nature of life is that the bigger purpose must be held, and that's why sacrifices and compromises are necessary. The bigger purpose is the priority. And even when you don't see it, the bigger purpose's will is one that preserves you too, that constantly saves your life, that leads you to where you need to be, that leads you and maintains your favors, that keeps you breathing, that keeps you grounded, that keeps you here, that keeps you able to face another day. So with that said, what seems like a deed that is only for the ancestors, what seems like things that we only do for abokoko nabomkhulu, is actually a deed for yourself and your family community and the homestead as a whole. But that's not all. It is also the purpose of creation as a whole. To avoid your ancestors and their calls is to avoid the bigger purpose of creation as a whole. It is to alienate yourself that deeply from how life plays out, from how the universe functions. And this is what is actually at the core of why things are to become a mess in your life. It is not just because of punishment. It is because you have alienated yourself from the universe's function. You have alienated yourself from your homestead's function. You have removed yourself from the things you actually need to survive. And this is what is at the core of people's lives then becoming a mess. They are symptoms of your alienation from life's rhythm as a whole. Not everything has to be liked to be done. It's simply what has to be done. Step outside of yourself and see that you are also here to honor creation's purpose and to actually move to life's rhythm and to uphold the universe's function. This is a large part of what your existence is meant to do. So, in closing, what I would like to say to you who needs this, go back home. Go back home gracefully. Go back home with an open heart, an open mind, an open spirit. Go back home with love. Go back home each and every single time. It is the only way that you will be able to move forward in this life. Buyel'ekhaya.